If we can just we'll have a call to order. This is the December 1 Westfield Common Council Finance Committee meeting. We have an extensive agenda, but it'll be fairly short because I don't really think too many people are on the call to discuss some of the things that we have on the agenda. So if we can have just a call to order, we'll take a roll. And Kim, do you want me to do it or do you want to do it?
Either way is fine.
Okay. Just Scott Fry.
Here.
And Joe Edwards.
Here.
Okay, and obviously I'm here. And if we can get an approval of the October 2020 minutes, I'll motion that we approve the minutes for October 2020. Someone could second.
Second.
Okay. Does anyone disapprove of the 2020 minutes? Okay. So they're approved. All right. So that's pretty quick. So I just want to make a quick statement here before we get started. The reason that we have the Finance Committee meeting is so we try not to take all the time to discuss the financial operations and financial aspects of different and varying aspects of the city's functioning bodies, etc. However, sometimes obviously conflicts come up, or maybe just perceived conflicts come up where people don't want to address certain things. And I do believe that the Finance Committee does provide an opportunity to discuss certain financial matters about the city, and that way we don't spend 2 hours talking about them in the city council meetings. With that being said, and that just kind of leads me into our 905 discussion, and this is the examination by BKD, Baker Tilly, and Taft. I had requested from Todd Bertrand, or anyone for that matter, to contact these gentlemen and ask them just kind of where we're at. Are we 50% complete, 30% complete? Do they have no idea at this point? And where we are in our billings. I was actually informed that that is outside the bounds of what we are allowed to ask. With the lack of transparency, maybe they'll actually listen to this call and understand what the actual issues are that are facing the city at this point in time. And this is just my statement, because I think it's very disappointing that we can't even, as a city council, we can't even ask where we are in the process. And it's disappointing, and frankly, it's poor business practices to not be able to ask where we are. If someone thinks otherwise, please feel free to comment.
Troy, I fully agree. I can't imagine any business that would operate in this fashion, but it seems like that's what's going on here.
Yeah. So, okay. So at this point, we don't know where we are where they are in their discovery or test of transactions or anything for that matter. So I guess we'll just keep writing that blank check to them and hoping for the best, that we spend enough money to make everybody feel like we actually worked through all the problems of the city. So,
Troy, very quickly, were you given an update at least as to what the bill is at this point? I know there was no update as to how far they are in the process. Were you given any sort of update as to what the bill was at this point in time?
No, zero. We're not allowed to communicate or ask.
So to your point, that really is just a blank check we're going to be asked to approve.
Yes.
That doesn't seem quite right.
Yeah, but hey, we're all about transparency and collaboration. So that's great. So okay, let's just move on to the next thing. Like I said, we'll probably move through these things pretty quick. The SBOA findings, discussions as it pertains to the financials. The 2018 and I don't know if the 2019 comments are public yet. I'm actually not real positive on that at this point in time. I was not in the 2019 meeting, so maybe Scott or Joe can clarify something along the lines of what I'm going to mention here. So the 2018 findings, it's clear that we don't have systems and processes in place from any standpoint to ensure that we collect money or that frankly that agreements or adjustments are updated. I think these are the same things that we have said for some time. I think the State Board of Accounts actually probably elaborated on that. I don't know if there's a whole lot more to be said other than that we continue to operate. I mean, this is obviously just as it pertains to the financials. It has, and this has zero to do with Grand Park, in my view. It actually just has to do with the actual way we operate as a city, that we need to be better prepared and have our systems and processes in place, not just for, again, has zero to do with Grand Park. It just has to do with how we operate as a city. And we can't operate just by handshake agreements and nodding our heads that we all agree or yes, and without memorializing the documents. And from what I'm understanding, I just got an email that the 2019s were filed or made public 11/30 or November 30th. So, Scott, Joe, I don't know if you guys have any comments on that, but I mean, I think it does go to the financial aspects of the city and the constraints that we may have, because we really just don't know, because that means agreements could be made and we wouldn't even know about it by handshake agreements, and we just find out after the fact how they're going to impact the city.
Well, Troy, I think it's important to realize, kind of going back to the first item on the agenda, though I'm more than a little concerned that we can't get an update as to how far we are into the process. I'm not asking for results yet. I just want to know where we are in the process and
Correct.
How much we're spending. The fact that we can't have that is more than a little concerning. But what hopefully will come out of that process when it's all said and done, if we can afford it, is going to be, some processes, some procedures that we can implement. That hopefully will be the upside that will kind of help alleviate some of the issues that, item number 2 on the agenda, the SBOA findings. Hopefully it's going to help eliminate or put in place things that will prevent that from happening in the future. So I would just point that out.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. Go ahead, Joe.
One of the things that the 19 audit did point out, that a lot of the consideration in the 19 audit was a repeat of 18, except now we had to indicate corrective action procedures to cure those problems or to, make them better. And I did that in my letter. I pointed out a plan in consulting with our attorney, that we would take certain steps, and I'm not going to discuss that until December 10th. I think is the time when we have to openly discuss what corrective action procedures we're going to take. But I can't imagine a situation or a business where financial dealings are concealed by the administration and not brought to the legislative and financial body. This is simply not appropriate. It's not right. It violates Indiana law to a certain extent, and I pointed that out. We have answered. We've given a response, an official response. I don't know whether that's been released yet or not, but I don't think I can talk about everything until December 10 or 11. But there's a lot of stuff that we need to take a look at, and we need to have revealed to us that is not being revealed to us. And now part of it's just a matter of common courtesy, part of it is law. And so I think we have to be ready to take a look at that and see, what we really should have.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
I'm going to be follow that one pretty tightly.
Yeah, I think those are good comments. Really good. Okay. Well, again, if anyone, from the city is on the call that would like to comment in regards to those things that up to this point, be happy to listen to them. Anyways. Okay. Let's just move on. 925 is the RDC annual report of TIF districts. And this is actually the report that we had in the past. I just wanted to, as we come up on year end, I wanted just to talk a little bit about this report. And I have it in front of me from Crone's office, and I know Jim is on the call. And this is really, again, this is more just to get us more familiar with the TIF revenues and our payments and debt service and et cetera. And Jim, actually, I know you're on the call, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and it looks like, you've done a pretty good job here on this. If I could just ask a quick question about the revenues, expenses, and cash balances. So because I believe in 2020 or 2021, one of the bonds are paid off.
Right.
Is that correct?
The NDOT bridge loan, Troy, is the one that got paid off earlier this year.
Okay.
This spring was the last payment, that 472 you see there.
Yeah.
That one's gone.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's the one you're referring to. I know. Yeah.
Okay. And then the payment to the RDA, the 2018 lease rental, the road infrastructure, how long does that last?
Well, I don't have it in front of me, but it would be a 20-year deal from 18.
Okay.
That would be I don't have that file in front of me, but it's a long-term bond, and it was issued in 18, so it'd be till 2038 or 39, something like that.
Okay. And hey, Jim, is this similar to the bonds like what we've done? Where is there another backer to that bond, or is it just us?
That's a city bond, Troy, and the primary security for that is actually local income tax.
Okay.
But the plan was always to pay those, and this is one of the Grand Park bonds, Troy, was to pay those with TIF as it became available. Excuse me, and there is enough for the payment on this one out of East Side. So,
okay. Does the debt service go to that lease rental since it is expired? Then the $428,000 or whatever it would be.
Yeah, that's not that was just more of a debt payment. That's not a lease rental transaction, but that one's done.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, the 428. That's the East Side TIF bonds, and those are TIF pledged bonds.
Okay.
I wish I had that. I thought your meeting was tonight at 6, Troy.
Yeah.
I don't have any of my files with me. I dialed in at the last minute from home, and that's fine. But I don't have a folder with me to pull up that schedule, Troy. So I'm not trying to be dodgy, because I get the sense that you guys. I don't want you to feel like that from me, that I'm trying to keep any information from you. Anything I can't answer off the cuff, I will certainly follow back around if it's important, Troy. I just want to make that clear.
No, I appreciate that, Jim. I really do. Is there okay? So just kind of going to Spring Mill Station. If we take a look at that, obviously, we should continue to have tax increment, revenues.
Right.
Will that balance just continue to increase until we decide whether we don't want the TIF or don't need the TIF or whatever the case may be?
I believe that area, Troy, was set up, and again, I am answering a little bit off the cuff, to
Okay.
do a roundabout and roadway improvement in that Spring Mill and 100 and, is it 61st? You know, where the Kroger's and all that area there,
Yeah.
I think is where it is. So I think that money is being built up because there's no bonds issued. I think the plan was to do pay-go improvements using that TIF. So
Okay.
when there's enough money there, they would use that to do whatever the next project is. Does that make sense?
It does.
That's my recollection on that, Troy, on the
Okay.
Spring Mill.
No problem.
John, this is John Nail. I'm on the call as well. I can confirm that the next project that we're looking at there is 161st and Spring Mill Roundabout, and we have shovel-ready plans for that project.
Okay,
We
good.
just are waiting for the.
Okay. So where that light is, John, that's going to be a roundabout?
Yep, that's correct. And like I said, we have final plans. They're ready to go. We just need some money to build it.
Okay. And what about the 146th Street TIF? You know, the cash balance was 847,000. Presumably it'll be 1.1 approximately this year or higher. Is that the same?
I don't know on that one, Troy, off the top of my head. I don't recall what the long-term financial plans. Jonathan, do you know any plans for that area?
No, I'm not aware of any.
Yeah, I'll have to get back with you. I think that's one that's changed a lot over time. A lot of stuff was captured, and then a lot of stuff was torn down, and so it really didn't develop into a lot of cash flow. So I'm not sure ultimately what the plan is for that one, but I can follow up on that one for you, Troy, and see what I can find out. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you
I'd be
very
glad
much.
to do that. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Troy,
what
real
else?
quick, if I may,
Yeah.
and I don't have that in front of me right this second. Which one of those was expected to go towards the if we get things lined up and squared away with the tunnel? Which one of those is expected to go towards that?
Oh, yeah, I think,
I believe it was the Spring Mill.
That's what I was thinking as well.
was it Spring Mill Station? Yeah.
Yes, I believe so.
We were also talking about if we had any excess TIF in the SCP area, once that develops, that we might be able to use something from there.
Okay.
But that's more of a long shot, Troy.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
was asking the question, that's why I'm sharing it, because we don't know, it's being built, we don't know what it's gonna generate. We have a share of that, I mean, we have an agreement where, I think that was 80/20, I forget, there's a set amount of the increment that goes to the RDC on that one. And then the rest of it is to pay those bonds off for the SCP project development. But I think we had talked about if we can use that 20%, I believe it is, once it is created for projects like that, because it's right across from the tunnel.
Right.
So there may be some money from that, but it's going to be a few years in coming to fruition.
Okay.
Just to add, I think, and I don't know if John Rogers is on the call. He's probably in the RDC meeting right now, but I believe he did an analysis looking at that Spring Mill TIF, particularly with the apartment complexes coming online on the southwest corner of 161st and Spring Mill. I believe that went into his analysis for the availability of funds for the tunnel out of the Spring Mill TIF.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate that. Yeah, and Jim, if we can follow up on that, I'm just more curious, trying to make myself more familiar with, I mean, obviously,
Absolutely. I knew you had this report already. I knew you had this report already at some point, Troy, but it's such a good, clean, kind of easy summary to follow a lot of detail that I just think it's a good discussion point to start off. And we do it every year, and it really kind of pulls a lot of information into one place. So I really think it's a good starting point for you guys to build on your knowledge.
I do too. Yeah.
The TIF areas. So
Yeah, I agree.
anything else jump out at you when you're looking at it, Troy, that I could follow up on or try to answer now?
No, I'm just, I mean, obviously, Jim, I like to read the financials, and usually it's not the financials. I usually read the notes to the financials probably first.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
to try to get an understanding of, when things, like the debt service paid or balance outstanding, final maturity,
Right.
things like that. So,
And then the page after that is the last page of this report is a nice recap of the TIF pledge bonds, and it does give the annual debt service, and it does give the final maturity on those.
yeah, the appendix,
Boy,
the appendix
Any
C.
questions?
Yeah, no, that's good. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and again, you won't see the Grand Park lease rental payment on there because TIF wasn't formally pledged, just the lit. And let me elaborate on that, Troy. I mean, the reason we did that at the time is adding a TIF pledge where TIF is insufficient at that time or doesn't really exist yet, doesn't add any value to your bond. Pledging where you have the revenue stream is it. So we are legally able to pay it with TIF when the TIF's available, but it's not pledged. So that's why you don't see it. It's not a matter of we're not reporting it. It's just it's not a legal pledge, so it doesn't really show up as a TIF bond or TIF debt. So just want to clarify on that.
Okay. Yeah.
But the goal is to get all those paid with Grand Junction TIF or East Side or whatever's available, the city TIF, and get them off and not use any of the lit, the income tax revenue for that. And I think we seem to be continue to move forward to that goal.
Okay. Joe, did you have a comment, Joe?
Yeah, this report you're speaking of, is this something you've just received? I don't have that.
I received it a while, but I think when I think we received it when this John Rogers and Michael Michael went over some things. I think we got it at that point. The date on it is April 15th, 2020, because I do think, as it even says in the letter, I think it's actually required to be done. Correct, Jim? I mean, by April 15th.
Yeah. Yes, it's required to come to you guys prior to April 15th, and then by that date, it needs to go to the council. It doesn't necessarily have to be presented at a meeting, but it has to be provided to the legislative body by April 15th. And there are also some things at the same time, Troy, that are updated on the Gateway TIF app at that time, including this report, new parcel listings, that kind of stuff. Again, it's the learning process, so I'm kind of giving you guys, and we assist the city in doing all that to make sure that it's done complete and timely.
I appreciate that. Frankly, you may have supplied it, like it says here on April 15th, and I just, I really didn't even know what I was looking at. So.
I
understand. Yep.
If I'm not mistaken, they gave an overview of this in I want to say June or July at a
Yeah.
You may have, yeah. Well, and I think that was at the overlapping unit meeting, guys, the one where the school and other units were invited. I can't remember for sure. I wasn't there, but it may have been at that meeting where this was used, or I don't know. Anyway, yeah, this is a recurring annual report.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it, Jim. And thanks, Jonathan. Sure. I appreciate the insight. So. Okay. Let's move forward. The Grand Junction financial update. I've asked about this. I had a meeting with Mayor Cook about a week and a half ago. Maybe it's been 2 weeks ago at this point. I apologize. I can't think off the top of my head when that was, because there were three things that I had discussed and requested, and one of the things, just talking about the finance committee meeting, is and as it pertains to Grand Junction, is where we are in terms of a city from the taxes that we're collecting, because I've listened to the RDC meeting about Grand Junction, although it was fairly brief. Clearly, Grand Junction is way over budget and has some issues there in regards to what we've committed to, what we've explained to the city to have, and I've talked to the mayor about this, and I've explained to him that, my position is that this is why government should not be involved in spending taxpayer money on things like this. I mean, the commercial industry should have been involved and probably given incentives, and we probably would have spent about half or a third of what we have at this point, because clearly we have no business in taking a static event and running something into an operation. So with that said, I don't know if anybody from the city would like to comment on Grand Junction or if they plan to, but the floor is yours.
Yeah, Troy, I'm filling in for Jeremy today. He's in the RDC meeting, so trying to cover two meetings. So I'll provide a quick update. So as you're aware, December 14th, we'll be doing a full presentation on the current status of Grand Junction Plaza. So there will be plenty more details to come at that meeting. But as of right now, we have spent a little over $5 million to date in the construction of Grand Junction Plaza to Wilhelm, who's our construction manager. And we have a final guaranteed max price that was signed at the RDC meeting a couple weeks ago. That guaranteed max price is for $31.5 million. That is the construction dollar amount that we were anticipating for the project. So with respect to budget, we are at that budget, with the caveat that we have had to do some value engineering and remove some items and some scope from the original design of the park. So the major items that we removed, as I think you guys are maybe aware, and it was mentioned in the RDC meeting, the ice skating rink has been removed. The Trailhead Pavilion building above the ground, at least, has been deleted from the project for this initial build, as well as the amphitheater superstructure, so the cantilevered structure above the ground, has been removed. We are still constructing the stage and everything that is necessary to build the superstructure of that amphitheater and the Trailhead Pavilion in the future, if or when funding becomes available to complete the above ground facades of those buildings. So that's where we stand. Like I said, there will be more detail December 14th at the council meeting. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to try and answer them as best I can.
Jonathan, this is Scott. I appreciate your effort to provide an update here. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Please understand that, and I'm not going to, ask anything of you right now. But I would ask, and I don't know why this is, but it does seem like there's quite a bit of buzz right now about this. I'm getting questions, I'm getting emails, I'm getting calls on this. Several neighbors asking what's going on and what the status is. So I'm directing everybody to make sure that they join that December council meeting so they can see firsthand. So I'm certainly looking forward to that update. That way, they can get it straight from you guys and not from us. So that would be a good thing. What I would ask, if it's at all possible, could you possibly make sure that the presentation includes the initial rendering of what was expected with the price tag, and then the current status of expectation as far as what maybe a rendering as to what it's going to look like now with the price tag that we agreed upon.
Yes, I think that's a good point. So I know Vicky I know Vicky's listening in on the call too, and she's her team is helping out with the presentation, so I'm sure she'll make a note of that. I will say that we already do have an updated rendering of what is actually going to be provided, so that's already available for us, and we will obviously include that in the presentation. So I think it's a good point.
Yeah, John, this is Jeremy. I was able to join our RDC meeting ended. Scott, to answer your question, the presentation is largely complete. There are 3 renderings in the presentation. First one being the initial design rendering. Second one highlights the things that are being delayed or changed. And then the third one is the rendering of what it will look like constructed as planned today.
So just help me understand that last rendering, as planned today, meaning, the stuff that's going to be omitted until funding is available at a future point in time, or, hey, at some point down the road, this is going to be the final product. We just have to figure out what that time frame looks like.
No, it is what has been bid and contracted.
Okay. No, that's good. I appreciate
So,
that.
yeah, so like in 2021, when the park opens, what it's going to look like is what the rendering will show.
Perfect. I think that'll provide a lot of clarity and answer a lot of the questions that we're being asked. I say we. I know at least I'm being asked. So I'm assuming the other counselors are getting that as well.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, guys.
Sure.
Hey, Jonathan and Jeremy, just to kind of piggyback on what Scott was saying, and I remember going to the one meeting or listening to the one meeting. I don't remember if I was there personally or listened to it, but back, in 2019, when Grand Junction was being discussed, and I know we passed the one thing about, getting the 3 different bids, and I know you guys probably did the 3 different bids on this project as well, for each aspect. If maybe part of that packet or presentation, if you could also provide what those other bids were, who bid on them and what they entailed, because I thought I remembered in that meeting that we said that we had bid this out. We had already talked to, our project engineers. In fact, I believe the architect even said, or we said that he was actually involved in that process, and that, we were going to have, the renderings, we were going to have X, and so I'm just trying to figure out, where we missed it, or maybe that's not the case. Maybe we just always presumed that we weren't going to have these things, and that was my fault, and I looked at it and thought we were going to have these things, and maybe that was never part of the intent.
So, and I can allude to that a little bit. The conversation that was had back whenever it was the estimating exercise that we did during design in 2016. Effectively, we hired, the city, separate from the design contract, in order to provide some certainty on the cost estimating exercise, hired Hagerman Group to effectively bid out the project of what they could build it for in 2016. Which is, those numbers are what we utilized to generate our budget, and that budget that was approved for construction back in 18, I believe it was. The difference is the market conditions were so dramatically different between 16 and 18, specifically on things like tariffs on steel and material availability, workforce shortages, just general amount of work in the economy because it's so good. We just quite honestly underestimated, and I don't know that we could have foresaw the dramatic difference in the bids when they came in. And we can talk more about that, but as far as did we get 3 bids, the methodology that we're using, CMC, construction manager, management as constructor, it wasn't available to us until 2017, but that statute still requires the public bid process to be followed. So there was 27 different bid packages. I think we got roughly 65 bids on those packages. All that information is certainly available. To be able to talk about each one of them in the presentation, we're going to need a lot more time, but I can certainly make that information available to you all.
No, that's fair. Maybe just put it in a packet then or something.
Yeah, and we certainly can do that. And keeping in mind that the city only holds one contract for this project, and that contract is with Wilhelm.
Okay.
And then Wilhelm holds all the other contracts as the CMC.
And I would just add to that, on the 2016 estimate numbers, we use those as our budget, but we did provide a 3% escalation rate, which is very common for construction projects. But clearly, that escalation rate needed to be higher given the other global circumstances that were ongoing at the time.
So gentlemen, this is Scott again. I'm sorry. I would like to speak to that for just a second. And this is not something that we need to dive into right here, right now. But I would definitely like to take note of what I heard you say. And I want to discuss this in the future to see what we can possibly do to avoid maybe stepping in a trap like this again, or in a situation like this again. Forgive me. I want to restate what I heard here. As we all know, I think it was October, maybe November, but we know that it was the previous council approved this. They voted for it. They approved it at the end of 2019. If I understand what you're saying, and forgive my ignorance here, I guess I didn't realize this was the case at the time. In 2019, they approved the funding for this, if I understood you correctly, using 2016 numbers. So estimates from 2016 for construction, the funding was approved in 2019. Now again, I'm not criticizing that. I want to be clear. I just want to see if I understand that my what I heard is correct. In 2019, we approved funding for prices that were estimated in 2016. Jonathan, to your point, you guys threw in escalations of I think 3% annually to make sure you kind of cover, have a little bit of a safety net there. But case in point, in this example, that 3% escalation seems very far from covering. And again, not that I'm not pointing fingers, I'm not doing anything like that, so I don't want you to think that. But I just want to know in the future when we approve a plan, how do we make sure we're dealing with, in my mind, in my basic way of thinking here, in 2019, if we're approving funding, I think we probably should have had numbers that were more representative of that current point in time of expenses to get the project done. Does that make any sense? And moving forward, how do we prevent doing something like that again?
So it does make sense, and I don't want to mislead anyone in the fact that we did some homework. We did our due diligence to try
I'm sure you did. I'm not alleging that to be the case.
Those numbers based on the best information we had. Now, keeping in mind that it was a pretty substantial cost and effort to estimate these things in 2016, which certainly we could have done again. However, we chose not to, quite honestly, because we were pretty confident in our projections. But the other question is, how do we prevent this in the future? And quite honestly, what we do is we design and build projects when the funding is available, not design it, wait 2 years, bid it, wait another year. We go in today's world. In a perfect world, we would have bid and built this thing in 2016, and then by and large, most of this issue would not exist, in my opinion.
Makes sense.
We just didn't have the funding available to do it at that point in time. We being the city.
I understand. Makes sense. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that's a valid point.
The other thing that I'll highlight, and I mentioned it earlier, is this construction methodology didn't exist when we designed the project. It wasn't available to the public sector. Private sector has used CMC for years, decades probably. But when and if we design and build a project like this, again, we would utilize this methodology as it really is intended, whereas the design team and the construction team are working together throughout the design process, and then you get your guaranteed max price at the end of that design process, and you go build it with the input of the contractors are helping value engineer as the design is moving forward. We didn't have that availability to us because it wasn't allowed. It wasn't legal for public people to do that type of methodology when we were designing this in 13, 14, 15, and ultimately 16 is when we wrapped it up.
Gotcha.
So we would change our methodology to fit current available tools, which is CMC, or there's another one out there. It's build, operate, transfer, which is a different construction methodology that I would like to explore in the future. But obviously, those are all things that weren't available at the time.
Okay. I appreciate that insight.
Okay. Joe?
Jeremy, this is Joe. You're gonna give us an update on the 14th. Is that correct?
That is correct. I'll have a full presentation put together, and we'll have hopefully have plenty of time for Q&A. We ran a little short in the RDC meeting, which is why I'm doing individual meetings with the RDC members to address their questions this week.
Okay. All right. Well, we probably need that time to kind of let some of this soak in.
Yeah. That's. I am happy to present whatever, whenever, and to whomever that you all desire. I've been talking about this project for a long time. The fact that we're actually building it, it's pretty exciting to me, even if we are delaying a couple components. It's still going to be an amazing, one-of-a-kind, unique project and downtown amenity that will continue to generate economic development as it already has with the Old Town development, as well as all the restaurants and the other things that are coming as we know them today.
Definitely looking forward to that presentation, Jeremy. And as I mentioned earlier, I think the more that you can provide, even illustrations that compare, and it sounds like you're already planning on doing this, so I appreciate it. But they compare, what the expectations are in 2021 versus what the expectations were last year. Any renderings and things like that would go a long way. Again, that way you're not relying necessarily on the counselor's interpretation. The taxpayers can hear it for themselves and get their questions answered right then and there.
Yeah,
so
and that'll be perfect. And quite honestly, there's a decade's worth of knowledge and effort that's gone into this. If there are specific questions that you want to address, if you can send them to me in advance, then I can guarantee that information is available. But okay. I mean, I've been involved for the last 6 years, and I know most of it by heart, but I can't promise you I know everything about a 1,000-page construction document.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, Jeremy, this is Troy. So I just want to be clear, for my own education. So the 2019, when we approved that, and it's a question more for my clarification. When we approved that for the 36 or 37 million, whatever that number was, that was based on 2016 numbers?
It was based on 2016 numbers that were projected for construction in current dollars. So we added to the numbers we had, which were the best numbers that we could provide, keeping in mind that there were two estimating firms that worked on this, one being the consultants firm, Durham, out of the East Coast, and one being our own estimating firm, just to make sure that we were estimating in Midwest construction dollars, not East Coast construction dollars, and they were both aligned at the time. We then did our best to try to figure out what those costs would be. Well, at the time, it was at current dollars of 2018 and 2019. And there were unforeseen hurdles that came in between the time the funding was approved and bids came in.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just curious. I mean, have you gone back to these firms and said, hey, where were we wrong? I mean, where was our beta? Where was the risk at? Where do we? Because I'm sitting here looking at my screen, and I have the luxury of being able. I have programs, so I pull up materials and commodity indexes or indices, and I'm sitting here looking at construction materials from 2019 till today, and they've only gone up about 3% from the end of 2019 to where we are today. And I go back to 2016, and I can see these the different levels of not only construction materials index, but I can see commodity indexes, labor index, construction labor index, and what those levels are. And although there are some things that have gone up, for instance, even though we probably aren't using a lot of it, lumber, for instance, has increased, right? I mean, by quite a bit. But there's other things like oil that has gone down. And so I'm just trying to figure out, what where we're off. Where they made the mistake,
The short answer Troy, is that we did everything we could with the best of intentions to deliver the project that we proposed, and
Sure.
quite honestly, it just didn't. It's not going to happen for the dollars that we had available. I do have estimates to add the 2 buildings back, which are the main deletions. We will still have a skating rink. It'll just be different. But
Yeah. And Jeremy, don't take this wrong. I do believe that, I mean, the best intentions, I mean, and because I guarantee you guys do not want to come back to this city council and say, you know, gosh, we need more money, right? I mean, you know.
Well, not only that, Troy, I stood up in front of a number of different groups of people and all but guaranteed that this was the cost of the project. And I'm not going to do that knowingly and damage not only my reputation, but my, you know, people's trust and faith in what I have to say. I'm not going to do that willingly.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, I'm just kind of curious as to what, you know, what that firm, you said Durham's, or would you?
There was 2 different ones. One was Durham. It's an estimating firm out of that was a part of the design team. So a part of that project was cost estimation. And then the other was Hagerman Group, which is a construction company. Hagerman was in the fight to be the construction manager. They did not get selected. My assumption is they are not going to be a real willing participant in explaining why their numbers were wrong.
Yeah, right.
And I'll be honest with you. Estimation, especially on a construction project, you're talking about quantities and costs. I don't think there was anything wrong with the quantities or the costs that were given to us, even compared to now. But what you can't budget for is the demand in the marketplace from a labor perspective, and the fact that there is none. There's a labor shortage across all trades. The fact that the market is flooded because the economy's so good. There's construction going on everywhere, and these contractors can basically name their price. There's a great amount of steel in this project. There's a lot of issues with tariffs and trade embargoes and everything else associated with steel. And there's all these things that we couldn't put our hand on at the time that we were doing this, that have all changed in the marketplace from then till the last bids, which were earlier this quarter and approved last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Jeremy, so this is just a comment, and you know, maybe I should do this off record, but so the one thing that I would encourage you guys to do, and you guys can take this for what it's worth or throw it in the trash, but so for instance, I'm sitting here looking at the U.S. Construction Contracts Index, and people use it to estimate, you know, prices, and I'm looking at these, I'm looking at like 5-6 different indices here, and the U.S. Construction Contracts Index from the end of 2016 to today is actually negative. I mean, there are spikes and there's hills and valleys in that, because based on the economy and things like that. But you know, I'm looking at that and I'm like, you know, why wouldn't we be using that to estimate? And this is not necessarily you, and maybe this goes back to Durham and the other one, right? I mean, but why, you know? I'm sitting here looking at all these, and I'm like, I'm Joe Schmo, and I can pull up these indices. Why are we not doing the same thing? You know, I mean, to estimate these things.
Does that have information specific to Central Indiana?
Yeah, it's nationwide. This is nationwide.
Yeah. Well, okay. I don't have an answer for you as of why we're not doing that.
Yeah.
Or even if we did do that, I don't know the answer.
Okay.
One thing I would add, Troy, is I mean, this project specifically is very unique, very one of a kind. I would say that on, like, for a road project, a roundabout project, we are pretty darn good at estimating those costs.
Right.
Just as an organization, because those specific pay items are standardized, and we have great data for all of those pay items that go into a road project. So our estimation abilities are really strong for those standardized projects. It gets a lot more complicated and more difficult to estimate very unique, one-of-a-kind pay items for construction. And I'm not sure that I understand your point with regards to material indexes and commodity indexes, but it's very difficult to incorporate unique items just with one index.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, the roundabouts are repeatable processes, right? I mean, so, okay. Okay. All right. Joe, Scott, anything else?
Nothing for me. I'd just like to have Troy a copy of that TIF business report that you mentioned.
I'll send it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Nothing from me. I think Jonathan and Jeremy addressed my questions, and I'm looking forward to the council meetings, the presentation at the council meeting.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate you guys being on here, seriously. So, okay, well, thank you very much, everybody, and we are now adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, guys.